persons having business before the Honorable.
It's the fifth and final day of oral arguments here at the Supreme Court on the constitutionality of the reproductive health law. Both camps are confident.
Of course, it is very different from lobbying before the Congress. This is the last frontier, and we are very hopeful that the justices will look into all the issues very judiciously and very carefully.
The fight is nearing the finish line, and we will be sustained by the Supreme Court, and finally the Filipino people will reap the benefits of the RH law.
The discussion goes back to the question, does the RH law violate freedom of religion? But the biggest debate since day one revolves around the question, are contraceptives abortifacients? The Catholic Church says they are.
This is about right to life from the moment of conception. So I think that's the most important issue here, and that's the most compelling issue that we have brought out and we have argued.
It's mostly a repeat of the arguments raised in the last 13 years in Congress.
The arguments of the public respondents and the private intervenors were strongly anchored on the unequivocal provisions of the law and medical and empirical researches, while the arguments of the petitioners were based feebly on religious dogma and imagined fears and apprehensions.
Emotions are high at the Supreme Court as it was in Congress. Lawyers Against the Law says government funding of contraceptives violates the constitutional right to life and the law of God. RH law advocates disagree, insisting the law in fact preserves the lives of mothers and teenagers exposed to unwanted pregnancies. Critics of the RH law were the first to present their arguments. They were grilled for hours by justices perceived to be in favor of the reproductive health law. When it was the turn of the RH law advocates to present their side, justices perceived to be against the law asked the tough questions. What happens now? Both camps will submit their memoranda. It will be discussed in an en banc session and the justices will finally decide.
We don't really know when the Supreme Court is going to come out with its decision.
The fate of the reproductive health law is now in the hands of 15 Supreme Court justices who get the final say on issues Congress deliberated for 13 years. It is not an easy task. The Chief Justice herself asked, should the Supreme Court reverse a policy made by two co-equal bodies, the legislative and the executive, or should the justices exercise judicial restraint? Carmela Fonbuena, Rappler, Manila.